Try hard on a mindfulness practice. Be patient. So we can be happy in our life. In this world, there's no real happiness. There are only things that are impermanent. It is not predictable when we're going to have a life problem. Life insurance doesn't really work, as you can see. When we die, we can't collect the money. What's the point? Practice as much as you can so that we can guarantee ourselves. The mindfulness practice will benefit you in your presence. If we do it right, we can get happy now. Don't have to wait for the next life. Happy in both presence and the future. When we practice and understand it, we are confident in ourselves. Usually human is afraid of death because we think that death will take everything from us. If we practice a lot, we are not afraid of death. Because we know that the future will be better than this life. For instance, when our life is full of poverty and one day we have to migrate to a better place, a place with prosperity and wealth, we are not afraid to move there. But if we suffer as a human and we are not certain that our life will be better or worse in the future, we will attach and cling to things that we currently have. And what we currently are, as a refuge. The masters have taught if we are human, then we want to be human again. Same with the dog life, a dog wants to be a dog again. It's attached to its life, it's satisfied with its current lifestyle. A dog is uncertain about life, that it's going to get better or worse. Lack of confidence in itself. Therefore, if it is uncertain, it chooses to stick with the current dog being. It sounds the safest. Therefore, when one is born to any life, it will be reborn in that type of life over and over for a very long time. A cow will be a cow for a very long time. As well as a dog. My master has said that his great master was born as a dog for 500 times. Very long time. However, if we practice mindfulness, we aren't afraid. We know that our future life will be better than the current one. We might not end up in heaven or be one of the riches. For example, a Sotapanna, one that achieved the first partial enlightenment, will be born at least as a human as a minimum. Life will continue to be human or above. It's like when we take a final exam. The worst score we can get is the same as the one we have just taken. So that we're not afraid. On the other hand, if we fail the exam, we will retake the class as a result. Then we are afraid. Practice a lot of mindfulness. We will be happy in the present. As well, the happiness awaits in the future. At last, we will obtain the ultimate happiness called nirvana. Nirvana is true happiness. When the mind has entered nirvana, it's happiness with tears. One could have asked, how come? Wouldn't I have experienced this kind of happiness before? It's the most amazing. We usually have tears when we extremely suffer, but with nirvana, we have tears with happiness. It feels happy that the mind cannot hold it. When the mind enters it the very first time, it is not used to it. It feels like happiness will almost kill us. Life has been with happiness for years until it's finally used to it. The mind is adjusting to the phenomena from nirvana. After the mind is adjusted, it continues to have the ultimate happiness since. However, it's not reacting to happiness like it was doing as the first time the happiness is obtained. One of my masters is a great example. His name is Luang Pu Su Wat. He said that when the mind was detached from the definements, destroying the samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth, he said it appears like grabbing a handful of stems of grass rooted on the ground, which what's being grabbed is the avidya, ignorance or delusion in his mind. It grabs it, pulls it with a great force, then throws away. The observing mind is destroyed, the mind detaching from itself. The mind and the avidya were sealed together. When the mind is detached, it also detaches avidya, ignorance or delusion, throwing away. He said that he had a tremendous amount of ultimate happiness for about a year. Then later his mind becomes neutral since. I looked at the master at that moment. I was like, is this really neutral? I looked at him again. It was like a bunny looking at the moon. I was that bunny. Or it's like a dog barking at an airplane. Even though he said his mind is just neutral, no happiness in this world would come close to that his mind was receiving. At that time, he was so sick. He was having a stroke as a result of a car accident. He was completely disabled in a wheelchair. On top of that, he couldn't even swallow saliva. It has to be sucked out with the help of others. If we're in that situation, we would be depressed to death. However, he was sitting idle with joy. When I went there for a visit, I used to sit around with the master, which allows his caretakers to take a break in the meantime. They were pretty busy and tired taking care of the master all day 24/7. When there was a visitor, those will take a chance for a rest. I was sitting there with him on the ground while he was in the wheelchair. Then he mentioned some of the Dharma or the teachings. Then he said he was neutral. For me, he looked very happy. There was no word from him for a moment. Then he said, "So happy. It's truly happy." If I was in that situation, I would have said, "So painful. It's truly painful." Man. He was happy just like that. It's the happiness that cannot be found in this world. Above world happiness is the one that is way more superior. The happiness that we have known is so poor and has so little value. For instance, happiness from being rich. Happiness from being famous. Happiness from having a very beautiful wife and such. Happiness from having power or a higher job position. Such happiness is so poor. Earlier this morning, I have already mentioned that all things in this world that value will bring us suffering or pain. There's not a thing that values without bringing us suffering. They are suffering by themselves. Dharma or the teachings of the Enlightened One is the only thing that gives us true happiness. All of us here have an opportunity to achieve a tremendous amount of this ultimate happiness. Why do we still have such an opportunity? We still do because the Dharma that the Enlightened One taught, leading us to the path, is still around. Such Dharma is still around. The mindfulness practice is to keep developing satipatthana, or the establishment or arousing of mindfulness. It's the only way to be liberated and truly purified. Satipatthana, indeed, is not regular mindfulness. It is the mindfulness that one is aware of his own minds and body. Being aware of others is not the way. One that does will be aware more frequent of others, ignoring the awareness of his own minds, not seeing the defilements of his. For instance, the masters in the past would warn us not to observe or watch the minds of others until truly seeing one's own minds. When we have seen our minds clearly, it is not so punished to see others because we are able to identify whether the minds that arise belong to ours or theirs. When we haven't achieved or understood the Dharma, one should observe ourselves. Do not observe others. Observing others' minds will lead to confusion because we will not know if the phenomena arise in this mind or others. The mind is distorted. Therefore, be mindful of ourselves. How is this hard? When sitting, be aware of the sitting. Do you feel that the body is sitting? Who doesn't know? Consult a psychiatrist. You must be crazy. When you're sitting but don't know that you're sitting. However, this world is full of crazy people. When sitting, most people are lost in thoughts. Daydreaming of something else. Not self-conscious. Samdedtho, one of the masters in the past, said that in this world, there are a lot of crazy people. When he played dumb, he was just playing dumb just to play dumb. He said, when he's crazy, others said he's good. When he's good, others said he's crazy. He said when he's crazy, he is with the defilements and deluded with the world. But others said he's good. On the other hand, when he is what he is, others said that he's crazy. The truth is that he is the way he is normal for the master. Therefore, just be aware of the body. It is not that difficult. Do you see your mind that's wandering off? Thinking about Samdedtho. I would ask for the lottery numbers, somebody might think. Like I said, be aware of the body often. It's not difficult at all. Right now, the body's sitting, let's know that the body is sitting. Right now, the body's breathing. Let's know that the body's breathing. How can this be difficult? Do not daydream. Also, do not control the mind to be calm. Use your mind as it is. Use your body as it is to practice. We differ from those who don't practice that we have awareness. We are just slightly different. Others who don't practice will have a mind that is happy, unhappy, positive, or negative. As well as a body that is standing, walking, sitting, or laying down. We will have the same thing as they do. The difference is that when breathing in, we know that the body is breathing in. When the body is standing, walking, sitting, or laying down, we know. When we're happy, we know. When we're unhappy, we know. When we are not happy nor unhappy, we know. When the mind is in greed, we know. When the mind is not in greed, we know. When the mind is in anger, we know. When the mind is not in anger, we know. When the mind's lost in thoughts, we know. When the mind concentrates, we know. When the mind wanders off, we know. When the mind is bored or depressed, we know. There you go. Keep being aware of these feelings. Everybody can do it. It is not difficult. My master, Luang Pu Duun, said that. The mindfulness practice is not difficult. It is difficult for those who don't practice. How is it hard to feel your own mind and body? Really, it is not difficult. Like, now. The body's sitting. Knowing that is sitting is not difficult. Now, if the mind is happy, be aware that it's happy. How is it difficult? It's difficult for those who are not mindful of the body and minds. Those who are not practicing are the ones who are not aware of the body and the mind. Knowing the minds and the body is not difficult to do. Be aware often. Later on, we will see the truth of the body and minds. In the beginning, we see the truth that this body and this mind are not us. Not ours. There is no us. Just like today, Dharma Day. About 2000 years ago, Quan Tinyu was first who achieved Sotapanna, which means the stream enterer or the first partial enlightenment. He sees the truth that there is no self. The body is non-self. The mind is non-self. How come did he see that truth? He sees it because he was aware of the mind and the body. When seeing the body often, we'll see that this body is not us. When seeing this mind often, next we'll see that this very mind is not us. It feels like that. Again, it's not difficult. Seeing that the body is non-self or we do not exist is the beginning level of wisdom. The wisdom of Sotapanna. When we keep practicing, wisdom will get more profound as it goes. At some point, we will see that this very body is what suffers. There's only greater suffering or less suffering. You do not see that. You only see that the body is happy sometimes. And unhappy other times. Isn't that right? This body is happy sometimes and unhappy other times. That means you have not yet achieved the wisdom. If you have the beginning level of wisdom, you'll see that this body is non-self as well as the mind. The intermediate level of wisdom is the one for anagami, meaning non-returner or one who has achieved the third partial enlightenment. It's the realization that the body has greater suffering or less suffering. When the mind sees the truth of the body that it is what suffers, the mind will detach from clinging the body. It lets go of the body because it only sees suffering in it. When the mind sees the truth, it becomes dispassionate. Then lets go of attachment. The mind is liberated from attachment in the body. This state is the state of mind of anagami. The intermediate level of wisdom. For the advanced level of wisdom. The Arhat, one who has established a full enlightenment. The practice of mindfulness will scope down to the mind itself. It is in this very mind known as the observing mind. When learning this observing mind, it will realize that this very mind is what suffers. You do not see that. You see that the mind is happy sometimes and unhappy other times. Isn't that right? It's happy and unhappy. Therefore, you are reborn over and over for countless of times without an end. The day you practice and see the truth that the mind is what suffers. It is not a poor mind. It is the noblest mind. It is the observing mind. The observing mind, by definition, the ultimate wholesome mind, with wisdom, arises without intention or arouse. It is good by itself. Sometimes it is happy and neutral other times. Therefore, the observing mind contains two types of minds. One is happy. The other is neutral. So when we practice, sometimes it's happy. Sometimes it's neutral. However, the mind that suffers is not the observing mind, instead, it is an angry mind. Therefore, we just need to develop our minds. In the beginning, our minds are deluded minds. A mind that is lost in thoughts or formation. We develop it until it becomes enlightened and knowing one. There are several ways to develop the observing mind. The first method is to get into the meditative state. When gaining the second meditative state, we will have an observing mind. This is difficult. As I can see, this method doesn't fit you. Your mind likes wandering off. Anyone here who uses the internet for longer than an hour? Be honest. Don't even think about getting into the meditative state. Don't even think about it. It will be a waste of time. However, there's another method to obtain an observing mind. This method is to be mindful of deluded or lost minds. Deluded minds and observing minds are the opposite. When being aware of a deluded mind, the deluded mind falls away, and there occurs an observing mind automatically. When the mind is deluded, it sees visual, hears a sound, smells a scent, tastes a flavor, senses the physical contact, and thinks. Amongst these six senses, it thinks the most. Then it sees visual as the second. It hears a sound as a third. Getting lost in thoughts is the most often. Therefore, we should know or be aware when it gets lost in thoughts. By doing this, you can practice mindfulness all day long because we are lost in thoughts all day long. If we want to be aware of smells, we don't do that often. Do you smell or does your body smell? A dog would know because is pretty good at identifying people's scent. We don't usually smell our bodies. We can only smell others. Therefore, the masters do not tell us to smell for practice because it occurs once in a while. The mind that thinks occurs all day and all night. A dream is when we think when we sleep. When we awake, a mind that thinks is called a thought. You dream when you're awake is called daydreaming. Are you familiar with daydreaming? It is not when you dream when you sleep or take a nap during the day. Daydreaming is a dream when you're awake, so you just keep losing yourself in thoughts. When we are aware when we think, the mind that thinks falls away, replaced with an observing mind. Therefore, the first goal is to develop an observing mind. An observing mind is a mind that has the right concentration. Once you obtain the observing mind, do not let it stay still. Let the mind work as it is. Eyes seeing visual. Ears hearing sounds. Nose smelling scents. Tongue tasting flavor. Body sensing physical contact. Mind sensing thoughts. Just like normal people. Those people see, hear, smell, taste, sense, and think. The difference is that those people are deluded when the mind goes off with those six senses. For us, when the mind goes off to see. When we know it, the mind that has just gone off falls away. Then the observing mind occurs. When the mind goes off to hear, it occurs with other people as well. The mind that goes off to hear also occurs in a dog. This is not that amazing. However, for us, when the mind goes off to hear, we are aware. The mind that has just gone off to hear falls away. The observing mind arises instead. When the mind thinks, we know. The mind that has gone thinking falls away. Then the observing mind arises. As a result, the masters encourage to focus on the mind that thinks because it occurs very frequently. How do we improve the awareness to be able to know the mind that thinks more frequently, not being lost in thoughts for a long time? The easy way to do that is to do a concentration meditation, focusing on being with a single emotion, such as breathing meditation or doing a very short pray. When we are observing our breathing and all of a sudden, the mind goes off to think, the mind has forgotten about the breathing. Similarly, when we are observing our breathing and the mind is too deep with the breathing, the mind is not simply observing it anymore. Focusing or being with the breathing instead. When being aware of the mind going off, an observing mind occurs automatically. Similarly, when we do a short pray like Buddha, or if you don't like Buddha, you can pray anything you'd like. Even praying the name of your girlfriend or boyfriend. It doesn't have to be Buddha necessarily. Pray anything you'd like, as long as the mind's happy. However, do not pray something that's negative, like curse you, or you die. You die. Don't do that because it has anger tendencies. You can do Buddha, or Dharma, or Sankhya, or whatever you like. Namapata or Namiti, whatever, it's up to you. This small set of syllables for the pray is something that we intentionally think. When the mind goes off, it has forgotten the pray. So when we think Buddha, Buddha is a thought. When the mind goes off for something else, it forgets to think Buddha, and it has gone off to think of something else. Using this method will greatly develop awareness. What's next when the mind has forgotten the pray? Return to the pray words again. Do not force it to come back. Instead, gently bring it back to the pray. The lost mind is evil. Just trash it. Throw it away and start doing the pray over. Do it over, and the mind will go off again. When you get good at this, the mind memorizes the status of the mind going off. Once memorized, next time it goes off, it knows. Next time it goes off again, it knows. Again and again. When I was practicing when I was new for a monk, the mindfulness practice was to just be aware of lost minds and observing minds. Over and over. Again and again. Before the monkhood, I was seeing the minds moving, trembling around my chest. After practicing for a while, all that arose was just lost minds and observing minds. The truth about an observing mind and a lost mind is that an observing mind is impermanent, and a lost mind is also impermanent. An observing mind cannot be held or maintained. A lost mind is not under our control, arising by itself. Therefore, we are developing the wisdom. When we are mindful of lost minds and observing minds, awareness is automatically developed because the mind has been good at memorizing how the mind goes off. Because the mind memorizes it well, it's the cause of awareness as a result. When we are mindful often, the mind memorizes it well. Like, it goes off like this. It does this. It goes off like that. It does that. In Thai, there's a good descriptive term for this to define a mind going off to become deluded. When the mind goes off, we know. When it does it again, we know. When it's good at it, it does it automatically. No intention to know. Therefore, auto-awareness is established. Keep practicing. One day, this auto-awareness will be obtained. A mind going off means that the mind is not concentrating. As soon as the mind knows when it goes off, that mind falls away. Then a mind with concentration arises immediately. When we see this over and over and more, we are gaining wisdom because we see the three characteristics: non-self, impermanent, and uncontrollable at all times. As a result, the right awareness is automatic. The right concentration is automatic. The wisdom is also automatic. At this point, the mind has become a great observing mind. It's automatic without intention or arouses. When our practice brings us to this point, if we want to speed up our practice, we cannot do that. There's nothing to speed up from now on. More practice will not get any better. Also, you cannot break the samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth. You cannot even quit either. How about you guys quitting the practice? You're so good at it. When you get to that point, awareness, concentration, and wisdom are all automatic. That means you cannot quit because the mind is in the flow of practice by itself. No way out. Trying to become Arhat or achieving full enlightenment will not succeed. Trying to quit will not succeed either. You guys haven't gotten that far yet. Don't quit now. Keep the practice going. You go like. Yay, let it go. Let it go. That's going to end up in plains of lost and woe. It is not yet time to let it go. It is time to develop the observing mind, strengthening awareness. Just keep practicing. One day you will realize that a thing that's truly beneficial exists. This truly beneficial thing I'm talking about is above the world. It does not exist in this world. The greatest thing in this world is either just visual, sounds, smell, taste, physical contact, or stories made up by the mind. That's all the world only has. We are fooled over and over. Being deluded with visual, sounds, smell, taste, physical contact, and thoughts is old stuff. Is sensual desire new or old? It's been around for ages. As well as anger and attachment to deluding. They are all old stuff, but we are still deluded with those six senses over and over. Now it is time to develop yourself. Stop being fooled by those already. In this world, there's no real happiness. Happiness from seeing visual is temporary. As well as happiness from hearing, smelling, tasting, making physical contact and thinking. Happiness above the world, there is. It's the happiness that is permanent. Keep practicing. One day you will see it. Today, we are still far away, but if we practice every day, walk every day, we are getting closer and closer. If nirvana seems hopeless to you because you think it is far away, it will be far away as you think. Being far doesn't matter. If we stay in present, being aware of the body and the minds, we're getting closer and closer. At some point, we eventually achieve it. Once achieved, we will realize that we are not an orphan child. The Buddha or the Enlightened One is our father and mother. All the others who obtained the Dharma are our brothers and sisters. The remaining part of our life is full of ultimate happiness. When we are dying, what is dying? The body is dying. Believe it or not, the mind will be different. It doesn't have the ones that die. There are no minds that wander because it no longer moves. The mind is complete, filling up the entire universe. When the mind doesn't have the ones that die, it doesn't have the ones that are reborn. If there are minds that die, there will be those that are reborn still. We keep practicing until the mind becomes deathless, free from death. What dies? It is the body that dies. Keeping the mindfulness practice will finally set us free from aging, pain, and death. It can be done in this life before we die. This doesn't mean that the mind is with nirvana when the body dies, but with this body in presence. Getting stuck with the cycle of death and rebirth is a result of our wrong view actually. Therefore, keep practicing.